Let's bring in Republican strategist Malik Abdul and Democratic strategist and NewsNation contributor Kurt Bardella. Happy Sunday morning to you guys. Welcome.
Good early morning.
Very early morning, especially with daylight savings, but thank you for joining us. Kurt, I'll start with you. Let's talk about that MSNBC interview. Like I mentioned with Scotty, it is an echo chamber for Biden and the party, but do you think he's actually reaching anyone new, those uncommitted voters, those undecided voters and uncommitted that don't know what to do yet?
No, because anybody watching MSNBC or Fox, for that matter, you already know how you're voting in this election. Let's be very honest here. There's no new ground to cover here. There's no one watching cable news, especially those two particular channels, who don't have very strong ideological leanings already. So there's not new voters to be there. But just as Scotty pointed out, part of this game is going to be about turnout. And so you do need your most ardent, enthusiastic Republican or Democrat voters to turn out. So if you're Donald Trump, if you're Joe Biden, you are spending time, investing time in talking to those audiences. And particularly when you have both parties at certain points here have been openly disenchanted with the choices of either Donald Trump or Joe Biden, you need them to get engaged. You need them to get motivated. You need to have them hear your message, be enthusiastic about your message, turn out and vote. And so I think that's part of the calculus right now is, as we saw with the State of the Union, President and his team think they need to do a lot to shore up their side of the aisle first.
Malik, do you think both Biden and Trump are avoiding unfriendly media? How long can they keep this strategy up?
Well, if we look at the numbers, Joe Biden, even around the Super Bowl, was about at 86 interviews in comparison to about 300 with Trump and about 422 with Barack Obama. It's clear that they don't feel comfortable with putting Joe Biden out there to do any type of major interviews. So he'll mostly have these sort of softball things. I do hope that this election cycle, Joe Biden doesn't spend time characterizing Donald Trump supporters. Last time around, if remember, people like me, we weren't black this time around. He's going to have another characterization of the voters. I think he needs to go out and do more combative or aggressive interviews, much like what Barack Obama did in 2012, when he actually finally went to interview with Bill O'Reilly, and it was actually a good interview. Joe Biden needs to do those sort of things because Donald Trump avails himself to interviews coming and going. He needs to do more.
Especially when you break down those numbers of interviews. So, Kurt, let's turn to those dueling rallies in Georgia that we've been talking about. How did Biden do when it came to targeting those voters? Do you think he should have done anything differently in the Peach State?
No, I mean, I think that he's doing exactly what you would expect the Biden campaign to do. He went out there, he continued the messaging that he started with the State of the Union address. He took the opportunity to walk back the illegals comment that generated so much firestorm and criticism on the left. And again, this is about shoring up your side of the aisle. And so that's part of the reason why he felt like he had to do that. I do think it's an example, though, of the left overreaching here. At a time when you had a president who overachieved with the State of the Union address by all metrics, why on earth would you make that moment an issue where he has to spend valuable real estate, valuable time talking about that, walking anything back? This is one of those times where they need to stop being their own worst enemy. Let it go. You know that he's on your side. You know that he's going to champion policies that you like. Why make him have to shame him into making any kind of apology or walk back? Tactically, I think it's idiotic.
Malik, we know Trump has a strong base, but how is he doing targeting those voters, like I mentioned before, that are undecided, those Haley voters that don't know where to go just yet?
We don't know what it looks like yet. Haley obviously just got out of the race. As we get to what many people are now talking about, that binary choice between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, we'll see exactly where those voters go. A number of those Nikki Haley voters were Democrat voters. They had no intention of voting for the Republican in the fall anyway. But I think that the overwhelming majority of those Hillary Clinton voters, much like the Ron DeSantis voters, are going to ultimately vote for the Republican nominee. But it doesn't mean that Donald Trump doesn't have work to do. And I think that the Republicans, Donald Trump, the campaign, the RNC, everybody needs to be on board, encouraging things, especially in Georgia, considering what Stacey Abrams built down there. They have to actually go after that early vote and be very aggressive in targeting their early vote strategy.
And Kurt, this is for you. Biden's traveling to New Hampshire on Monday for 2 events. Republicans have long criticized Biden's light schedule. He's been busy the last few days, though. Do you think he can keep this up?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that this is someone who thrives, actually, on the travel, who loves doing the grip and grinch, who likes retail politics. So many politicians and Malik and I have worked with and advised many, really don't like doing the retail stuff. I mean, that was Ron DeSantis' Achilles heel, really. It's kind of what killed his campaign. Biden likes getting out there with the average Joe, per se. He likes doing the rope lines and talking to people and taking selfies. We saw it at the State of the Union address. The guy wouldn't leave the chamber until they literally started turning the lights off in there. So I think getting out of the White House, getting out of Washington, getting ice cream with people, that's something he genuinely enjoys. And that's really where he shines. That's his most authentic self. Just like Trump thrives in that big rally setting and giving those speeches, Biden really thrives on those one-on-one intimate interactions.
Kurt Malik, don't go too far. We'll be checking in with you all morning long, guys. Thank you so much.